first, a quick message from our sponsor, Griffith Growth. Griffith Growth is a search fund founded by Jose Garcia Suarez, dedicating to acquiring and operating a single B2B services business in the background screening, drug testing, and security industry. Jose is a Stanford GSB MBA and Harvard graduate who holds PBSA certifications and is a proud NDESA member. He volunteers on PBSA committees because he believes in leading with industry knowledge, not just capital. Jose is searching for one company to buy, run, and grow for the long term. If you're a business owner in this space thinking about your next chapter, Jose wants to hear from you. And now, back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us again at the Background Screening Collective. I'm so excited about today's guest. If you're in background screening and you're not following Scott Paler on LinkedIn, you're missing out. I've been following him for a while now, and honestly, his content is like a compliance master class. Just recently, he's been covering new adverse action requirements coming out of Washington and Philadelphia, a landmark AI scoring lawsuit under the FCRA, and a California appellate decision that's going to keep CRAs on their toes. The man stays on top of everything. He's a partner at DeWitt LLP, chairs their background screening practice group, and has advised over 200 CRAs, data providers, and platforms. And one of the things I appreciate the most about you, Scott, is your philosophy on risk. You're not the lawyer who says no. You're the one who wants to hear the real plans so you can help figure out the smartest path forward. Scott, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be with you. And with that introduction, Robin, I'm taking you everywhere.
Well, I appreciate that,
Too
Scott.
nice.
I'm so grateful. I know Jamie and you go back as well in the industry. So really glad to have her here as well.
Thanks, Robin.
You've been shedding light on PBSA and legislative advocacy long before many of us understood the full scope of its impact. For companies that are small, medium-sized, can't afford in-house legal teams or ongoing high-cost retainers, what are practical steps you recommend to stay compliant, especially for those operating nationwide or across multiple states?
So, let's start with the lawyer part of it. So, although I am a lawyer, I certainly agree that attorney fees are expensive. I don't think that is news to anyone. But in this space where it's heavily regulated and where there is litigation cropping up all over the country, I think it's generally not realistic to ignore lawyers completely, right? For most small to medium-sized background screening companies, there needs to be some level of relationship and some level of reach outs to lawyers to make sure that they can try to stay compliant. But I think that there are strategic ways to do that. Right. I have background screening companies that I work with that always come to me on contract negotiations, and I have others that handle that entirely on their own. There are a couple examples of things that I think small CRAs have tried that I think is very cost effective in terms of working with lawyers. One is I have clients that will schedule an hour-long meeting with me once a quarter, or once every 2 months, or once every 6 months, and they come to that meeting with a laundry list of questions. And they gather and accumulate those questions over a course of the preceding months. And I have found that those meetings are an incredibly efficient way to cover a long list of topics and get a lot of advice that they can quickly put to action. Another thing that I think is cost effective, some attorneys like me that regularly operate in this space offer flat fee options, right? So everyone's worried about the clock, right? And not knowing how much attorney's fees are going to be. We certainly try to give the best estimates we can on the hourly stuff, but it's hard, right? But with flat fee stuff, it's predictable. In terms of other options, so, PBSA obviously is the go-to association in the background screening space. And I've gone to their conferences for about 20 years now. I think they're wonderful. There are lots of experienced voices, consultants, operational heads, salespeople, executives, lawyers. There are so many good, smart, thoughtful, experienced people with good judgment to listen to and to interact with. And, that's a pretty low cost or cost effective way to do it.
Not to interrupt you, Scott, but I want to jump on that because I have had my eyes locked on their legislative action tracker ever since Melissa flagged it to me as a really good resource in the past. So I'm curious, just a follow-up, what, as a lawyer looking at something like that, do you feel like it's comprehensive? Do you feel like it's really helpful for people to look at? What's a great way to navigate it? Are there other cool resources like that?
I get that question all the time. can I just look at one thing and get all the answers I need? And the answer is, of course, no, right? There is not a single resource or a single background screening compliance Bible that someone can just buy and put on their desk or put on their desktop and just turn to it whenever they have a question and have all their questions answered. I know some people are hoping AI will turn into that, but at least right now, I think it's working its way towards being a helpful solution. It's not totally there, right? From my perspective, Robin, I think it's more of a grab bag approach. So I think the best things that people can do, they can go to PBSA conferences, they can join PBSA committees, they can attend industry conferences outside of the PBSA context. For example, software platforms like Osseo or TazWorks put on really good conferences every year. You mentioned LinkedIn, Robin, and I think there's voices, it's not just mine. There are other consultants and attorneys and folks in the space that are posting valuable insights onto LinkedIn. And that's sort of an effective way of trying to hear what people think is worthy of talking about. And, one other way I think to stay on top of compliance is getting on law firm listservs. So, we send out, I think we just did this yesterday, we send out a message to the CRAs on our listserv about once a quarter, and we'll mention 4, 5, 6 things or more that we're seeing that we think are noteworthy. We don't charge anything for that. We're happy to put anyone on it that wants to be on it, but that's another way of trying to stay up to speed. So I think it's a little bit more of a grab bag approach as opposed to a one-stop shop.
Can I ask a real quick question? Wondering if you've seen so far in 2026 any common themes of questions you're getting.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe that are
side?
on the compliance side. Yeah, I think it's interesting for the small to mid-market CRAs. I'm part of your listserv, and I actually think it's very helpful. It's quick little tidbits of like, oh, didn't know. I think that's very, very valuable. But are you starting to find, as we head into Q2 of 2026, some common themes from people that you're regularly talking to or just kind of in the know within the industry?
I think for a lot of people that are not lawyers, they hear the multi-syllable word indemnification and their eyes start to glaze over and it feels like legalese. But one of the challenges is that in the background screening space, there's lots of indemnification promises that are being traded back and forth. If I'm to boil that down as basically as I can, it's essentially if you make an error and you have promised indemnification to a third party, say that's an upstream data vendor or a downstream CRA or a downstream end user, right? And that downstream party gets sued, right? Well, if there's a contractual provision that provides for indemnification from you, they can come back to you and say, you know what? We're in this thicket of a lawsuit because of your mistake. And now you have to cover all of our losses, our attorney's fees, our settlements, our costs, etc. Can be extraordinarily expensive to do that. And it's often not covered by insurance. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I'm getting often right now, which I think is an astute one, is when should we agree to indemnification? When shouldn't we? Is mutual indemnification enough, or should we try to just take it out completely? Can we get any sort of insurance coverage for it? What language is okay, right? All sorts of detailed questions on that issue. And I think that that's a really wise question to be asking right now. But that's just one example.
And that's a great one because it shows that a lot of times risk liability, we think, for me, I thought in more shallow terms on these things. And then I started hearing people like you speaking at conferences, seeing your posts and realizing, wait a second, am I really reading the fine print? Is this really covering what we're doing? So many small companies signed on for liability insurance. And after hearing you, I don't know if you realize it, they credit specifically your PBSA sessions on letting them realize, despite the broker knowing the industry, the coverage did not cover FCRA disputes. What? Yeah. So beyond insurance alignment, is there another overlooked 2026 tipping point issue?
Yeah, I think there's a number of them, right? So, I think the number one way to get sued, right, is to attribute an adverse public record to the wrong person, right? If you ask me to pinpoint what is the number one way, that's the number one way still. And it's been the number one way for many years. And so I'm always looking at issues that are tied to that matching situation, right? Because what people outside of our industry don't understand is that there is no scientific formula to match a record to a person. It's sort of half science, but half art to it, and involves some judgment, right? And one of the, I think, misconceptions that grew up in the industry that I worry about is the idea that anytime a background screening company sees two matching personal identifiers, so a name and a date of birth, for example, that anytime that two matching identifier threshold is eclipsed, they can report it, and that's permissible, that's legal, that's lawful. And that's just not true. At the end of the day, the only way for a CRA to be really safe on that issue, on that matching issue, is to get it right, right? And so then the question becomes, how do we set that meter? How do we decide if we have enough personal identifiers to link a record to a person? And there's some real judgment involved in that. And I'm okay with reasonable minds disagreeing, but what I get uncomfortable with is sort of that old conventional wisdom. As long as we have two personal identifiers, we're good.
You know, one of my friends, when I just started in this industry, I was at a party and they said, "Hey, she's in background checks, talk to her." And I'm like, "What's going on?" And it's a friend who, he said, "I've never been to Ohio, Robin, but all my background checks are coming back with these felony convictions." And they say his name was like, this is not his name, guys, but his name was like John Smith, you know, one of those, like Ron White. And so poor thing, a date of birth match, name matched. And I said, "Hey, try to understand who's a CRA and see if you can get in contact with them and say, I'm considering adverse action." And he used those words, and the CRA was so wonderful. They had really good dispute resolution procedures in place. And when I saw him next, he was really happy with how they handled it. He had his job. He's a scientist, you know, so he's a very logical type of guy. And sometimes end users just don't know how to bring it up or even kind of what to ask for.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I think that there often is uncertainty that surrounds these issues, right? Because they're complicated. And on the consumer side, like you mentioned, people often don't know where to go, what to do. And so once they figure out that they can often resolve these issues by going back to the background screening company and airing it out through a dispute, I think not all problems get solved, but a lot of them do.
It eases it.
What was that?
I said it eases it because I think,
Yeah.
as what you just said, is that you don't know what you don't know. So you don't really know where to go to get that information. I think that's a lot of it, is there's a misalignment in terms of where's that gap in terms of getting to where you know, unless you just happen to see somebody like Robin at a party.
That's right.
I mean, that's very rare, but you never know. So we'll stick it to that. I'm going to go ahead, Scott, on a personal question. I just wanted to know, you know, you've helped me so much, as well as Fairly in general, educate the market about the legalities of social media. Can you express a little bit, maybe in your own words, to our audience, what you see as the importance of social media screening and why companies kind of shouldn't turn a blind eye in today's world about it, or just your opinion in general? I'd be worth to know.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, social media background checks represent, you know, one of the very most exciting new offerings in the industry in the last, you know, handful of years. And I think it's for a pretty straightforward reason, which is that our whole society is now online. When I talk to employers that are trying to figure out whether or not to hire someone, what they're trying to accomplish in the pre-hire process is to get a real sense of who someone is, right? They may say A, B, and C on their resume, but who are they really, right? Are they a good person? Are they a hard worker? Are they going to treat coworkers well? Right? Are they going to show up on time? Are they going to avoid illegal drugs? Right? Like there's a laundry list of things that are basically like, can we as an employer rely on that person? Right?
Right.
But during the normal pre-hire process, it's tough to get a full read on someone because their resume only says so much. The hour-long interviews only say so much. Even the employment verifications going back to prior employers and saying, you know, did this person work for you during X date? It only says so much. What I think is unique about social media is that when people are posting their entries, they're not necessarily thinking about future job prospects, right? They're just living as we all do. And so to me, social media often provides an unvarnished look into who somebody is. And it can provide super useful, actionable information that maybe we do or maybe we don't want somebody to come work for us. I think the other thing I'd say is that, whenever I talk about social media, I'll have some number of employers or some number of CRAs say, but isn't that private information and doesn't that run into potential, discrimination issues?
Right.
Things like that, right? Jamie, I'm sure you hear that all the time.
Every day.
Yeah. And so I think to some degree, the word needs to get out a little bit. Number one, social media background checks in the industry, they look at publicly available information. They're not going behind a password protected wall. And so if you look at the laws at the state level, which are really the only laws on social media that are out there right now, those state level laws focus on not requiring a job applicant to share a private password. Right? Makes sense, right? But if it's publicly out there for anyone to consume, then an employer can look at it too. On the discrimination side, right? Employers to some degree, and CRAs are right, that an end user wouldn't want to see a sign that someone previously had cancer or that they're a religious minority, right? Or they're they raise concerns about union activity at their prior employment, right? Because those types of things are protected by federal or state law or both, right? But the advantage for the industry is that the industry can return information only in select categories, right? That may be appealing to employers and operate outside of those discrimination type concerns. So I think both in terms of the valuable insights that can be gained, as well as the reasonable mitigation efforts that can be put in place to avoid the problems, I think the combination means that social media background checks are worth considering.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest hesitation CRAs have to starting to provide social media screening as a product offering?
I think it's new, right?
It's scary.
With anything that's new, I think there's a natural feeling first, what don't I know? Yeah. And then I think with social media, like I said, there are some instincts that are based on something, which is maybe we shouldn't be asking for it because it's private, or maybe we shouldn't be asking for it because we'll get the wrong information, right? But I actually see that as being an opportunity for the industry. And I think that with education, employers get it. And quite honestly, most of them in my world, they're doing their own Googling and coming across Facebook accounts and other things, Instagram accounts and LinkedIn accounts.
And when you do that outside of the scope of your background screening or regular screening process, I know that creates a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity, because I previously worked in a different industry, different company, all that, and as a manager, and our background check came back, but then the team decided to do a Google search, and it created a lot of headache and was resolved with a lot of confusion, because it creates
a lot of bias. I mean, the reality is it's hard to not see what you saw, right? And it's hard to then go, but let me have an even keel, making a decision on that. So I think that having a consistent process and taking that bias makes it is a big deal, and I think employers should be worried about that.
Definitely.
But I still think there's always room to educate the market, Scott, like you said. I think that, and I live and breathe this in my world, so we're constantly educating the market. And I think when it comes to you from a legal standpoint, is getting people to also understand that this is completely legal, and there's no reason why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think it's about being thoughtful. And and what I candidly tell CRAs too is look at the lawsuit statistics, right? Almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them concern public records, right? Yep. And so, in terms of our biggest risk in the space, it's the criminal history, it's the sex offender registry stuff, it's the exclusion stuff, right? It's the licensing and disciplinary issue stuff. It's the stuff in the public records that by far is generating the most lawsuits. And I think that is sort of well accepted in the industry, right? Everyone runs criminal history checks, notwithstanding those risks, right? And notwithstanding that those risks, at least for now, greatly exceed what we see on the social media side.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's some good insight. And talking about educating the market, Jamie, we talk all the time, and I still didn't understand as much as I do right now about social media screening because of what you're saying, Scott. It's new, not everybody's doing it. What else is like that? What are other product offerings that need to be looked at more?
Yeah, one is identity verification, right? So we all know that, background screening reports at the end of the day are only as good as the inputs that come in. So if the wrong names, the wrong social security numbers, the wrong addresses, the wrong dates of birth are submitted, then ultimately the background screening report that's generated is going to be tainted. It's not going to have the right information, right? And we in the industry have known that for a long time. And so I think the industry has long wanted a solution to try to validate at the front end that the person is who they claim to be, right? So that when the background screening report is being created, we know that it's being premised on the right underlying information. So there are some solutions that are now percolating around the background screening space that are designed to try to fill that gap. And again, we're sort of still in the early stages. And whenever we're in the early stages, there are lots of, concerns and many, reasonable concerns. There also are evolving processes, evolving policies, evolving procedures, risk management techniques, contracts, everything, right? It's all evolving, right? And I think on the new stuff, that's where we are. That's where we are on identity verification too. But to me, there is sort of an obvious market on the business side for identity verification. And to me, it's another area that background screening companies and their employers will at least want to start exploring to see if they can get comfortable with the solutions and at least understand what's out there. The other one that's coming up a lot is not going to be a surprise. That's AI. So, we all know AI seems to be creeping up literally everywhere in our world
Everywhere.
right now. Everywhere. It's the vocab word certainly of the year and probably the decade and maybe the century. We'll find out.
Yeah.
But lots of background screening companies are in the midst of trying to incorporate AI into their practices and seeing, number one, does it make things more efficient? And number two, can we still uphold the same levels of professionalism and accuracy or exceed them? And from what I've seen, at least in my practice, lots of people are exploring lots of things. I haven't seen the industry settle out on, a certain set of procedures or certain involvement of AI, but I definitely see that as being part of the equation right now.
Scott, are you seeing it in the searching side of things, in the formatting side of things, in the organizational process side of things, and all of the above?
All of it. I mean, from my perspective, what I'm most sensitive to is AI involved in reporting, right? Because at the end of the day, the majority of our risk connects to the reports that go out and the content that's included in them. And so I know that there's lots of exploration right now towards using AI to some degree to gather information, to have it percolate into reports, to do QA on reports, all of that, right? And so from what I'm looking for as a lawyer in the space is how do we make sure that that's appropriately accurate? So when do we involve humans? How do we do internal audits? How frequently? What type? Do we start with certain things on AI and not others, right? So, to me, there's a space for reasonable minds to disagree at this very early stage as to when and how. And I have CRAs that are kind of all over the map. And to me, that's appropriate because we're still on the frontier when this stuff, and you have to sort of decide in your own risk tolerances and preferences.
Do you think that AI as a topic in general is kind of one of the biggest drivers in changing the background screening industry in the near future? Or do you feel like if you were to look into a crystal ball, Scott, what do you see in the next, let's be conservative and say 2 to 4 years? Like,
And
what
if
is
it
the
could-
biggest change factor that's going to impact the background screening world? If you were the magician under that crystal ball, is it AI? I don't know, maybe.
What tool or what new thing is most likely to create a big wave and change it? It's probably AI. I mean, we talk about it nonstop in our law firm right now, right? We're incorporating AI. We're figuring out how to use it well, where to use it, right? Where not to use it. And so, yeah, I do think that's going to be a huge part of the figuring out over the next few years is, where does AI fit? How do we get comfortable with it? How do we deal with the downsides to it? What are the downsides to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's in every aspect of your life. Like I look at, I
Yeah.
have kids in high school and they talk about AI every day.
Yeah.
We're in the workforce. We talk about AI every day. I mean, it's like it is everywhere. I mean,
It's
think
all
about you go to the
learning.
airport, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's everywhere you go. So it's, I mean, there's now conferences just around AI now.
Yes.
I mean, it's, you
Yes.
can't hide it anymore.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
it's
think-
interesting to see how people will embrace it.
I think
I-
for
Yeah, it's already been, like you said, Scott, everyone's trying to see where it lands in all the different areas. I know you mentioned law and your law firm using it. I have a cousin who works at a law firm, and she said, Robin, with these fake cases, you cannot be using AI. Like, what is this? This is serious stuff. So, do you see any of that coming on your desk these days? Not obviously not within your law firm,
Yeah,
but
so-
just in general.
So yeah, I mean, and I can say, like, we at our law firm have taken great steps to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? So, lawyers here are not going on ChatGPT to try to find cases. We have a closed circuit loop, through a very reputable, been around forever legal research provider. So, we went with a new solution from a very established provider to make sure that we don't get those hallucinated cases. But you look at our space, Robin, you talk about my LinkedIn entries. Well, some of the LinkedIn entries that I'm interested in right now are the lawyers that are getting into trouble for using AI in the wrong way. And there's lots of courts out there that are now sanctioning lawyers and assigning fines and other penalties for lawyers that are being sloppy or too aggressive, or whatever phrase you want to use, with AI. And so, to me, it's like anything else that we talk about. It's about being thoughtful. It's about balancing things appropriately. And especially when you're in a position like a CRA, where a caretaking role is super important, or a lawyer role where caretaking and quality of care and detail and technicalities are super important, we have to be even more cautious, right, with the use of AI, and to make sure that it's right.
Definitely. Well, Scott, we all know conference season is upon us, as it always is at this time of year. You've been a regular presenter at PBSA and effectively have built your own platform in the industry. Jamie and I were talking before this. I told her I'm an industry hopper. So I find myself here now for the 4 years, but it must be so cool seeing each other and different people growing in this space over the past 2 decades. For professionals who want to secure speaking opportunities and be a part of it all, what advice would you give? What makes a speaker stand out? What makes a presentation land? How do you build your audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think, first, before we talk about the details around presentations or presentation applications, I think it's about just getting involved with PBSA and having a presence. So, PBSA is a living, breathing organization that goes way beyond the conferences. The conferences are great, but that's not all, PBSA offers. I think the individuals that have the best chance to establish themselves and then to get those presentation opportunities are often super involved at the committee level, right? They're on the legislative committee or the best practice committee or the accreditation committee or what have you. And they're embedding themselves in the organization, because I think the organization rewards people that voluntarily contribute to it. But in terms of, conference presentation acceptance ideas or application ideas, I think one thing to consider is to partner with known commodities in the space, right? And so I think PBSA has favored over the years not just individuals speaking on their own, but individuals speaking as part of a group or as part of a panel or a team. I think they like the idea of having multiple voices up on the stage at one time. And so I think one easy way to put yourself a little bit higher in the pecking order is to connect with others that are established in the PBSA community and that can speak with you. I think a second thing is to, look at the agendas from past conferences and see what's already been talked about a lot, and to try to avoid those topics. PBSA is always looking for something fresh. And so I think the best way to find something fresh is to look at what's come across before. I think a third thing to consider is putting together a presentation or an application for a presentation that highlights some insightful nuggets, right? at the end of the day, I think that's what attendees want. They want to go to a presentation and walk away with 3 or 4 like actionable, usable insights that they can take home. And then the fourth thing I would suggest, the last thing, is come up with a good title. Like a lot of people get lazy on the titles, right? Because it's like, I put this whole presentation description together. I don't know. I'll just say ABC, right? Titles catch, right? Titles grab attendees. They grab reviewers of applications for presentations. And I think titles are an underrated way to get noticed in a pile of applications for presentations.
That's all really, really helpful and actionable.
Thank you. What I've tried.
It's worked, obviously.
I've enjoyed it. It's always fun.
You're a regular presenter. You're like you're a veteran there.
I have done it a few times.
Yeah, a little bit. Scott, if you want to tell us a little bit about your CRA compliance fly-in coming up. We've all obviously, again, seen your post on LinkedIn. You guys are doing a great job promoting it. People say it feels more like a working group than a typical conference. So if you could tell our audience a little bit about it and what they can expect this year.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate the chance to talk about it for a minute. So this is going to be our 3rd CRA compliance fly-in event. This event is organized by my law firm, DeWitt. We're located in the upper Midwest in the U.S. And what we set out to do is to have a little bit smaller conference and one that's focused on being super interactive. One thing that's different about this fly-in than other conferences in the space, we do 2 Ask the Lawyer sessions. So I'm getting up for an hour on each day, and attendees literally can ask any compliance, legal, risk management question that they have on their mind. And we can talk about it as a group to figure out where things are at. Second thing that's a little bit different, we do lots of presentations that I think deliver those useful nuggets that I mentioned I think people want. But the difference is that when someone has a question during that presentation, we'll take it on. So we're going right back and forth and answering people's questions as we go, at the end. And it's really designed to give attendees the chance to talk to us, to share their ideas, to ask their questions, and not just be talked at.
Yeah.
So a little bit different. Then, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, I love that you do the Ask the Lawyer thing, because what a value. And a lot of times I'm noticing if you don't have the right question, you're not going to get the right answers, because you as a lawyer can't anticipate what I might need. So sometimes you don't even think of the right question to ask, and you hear someone else and you go, oh, thank goodness they asked that. So I just wanted to jump in and interrupt and say that's so cool that's a part of it.
Yeah, we like it. People talked about that a lot the last 2 that we did. We don't do it every year. We do fly-ins every other year right now. But that's, what people have said that they really enjoyed about it is it feels smaller. It feels like they can ask questions, that they can share ideas, and they have literally 2 days to talk through issues with the lawyers and with their peers.
Scott, do you limit it to number of attendees, or has it grown over? Are you trying to grow it every year, or are you guys trying to cap it out just to make it still feel more small? And
that's a great question. So a little bit of both. Okay. So we definitely set out this year to make it a little bit bigger than we did in the past years, but what we are capping it, as well. So I would say that the majority of the spaces for the fly-in, the majority of the seats have now been taken. We have some available seats yet, but we have an approximate number in mind. And our goal is just to make sure that it stays small enough that people can have that interaction, ask all their questions, and feel like they're a part of it.
If someone was on the fence about coming, what would you say? Like, to me personally, I look at it as if I was a small to mid-market CRA and maybe I don't have legal counsel on hand. To me, I'm like, what an awesome resource to fly up for a minimal cost, be able to have a freestanding ask questions. But what would you say if someone was to go, I don't know, is it worth it? Should I go? Am I really going to get my questions answered? What would your pitch be?
I think what's unique about this is the amount of ground and detailed, actionable insights that we're going to cover in the 2 days that we have with everyone. And for any of you that doubt, and yes, there's always doubters, I do share feedback that we have received from past attendees. And I think what shines through in that feedback is they feel like it's different. They feel like they came away, some person said that that they wrote so fast and for so long that their hand hurt for several days after it, right? Or their brain was about to explode, right? People talk
You need
about
an AI note taker there.
You need it. Oh, yeah.
You need an AI note taker.
That's right.
And then you can
That's
distribute
right.
all the notes.
Maybe that's something we could talk about at the beginning. But yeah, people have said that it feels different to them, right? That it's more intimate. They have a chance to ask questions and they come away, each session they come away with several things as opposed to coming away with a handful of things at a whole conference.
That's awesome. Scott, thank you so much for being here on this podcast. Those are all our questions. I know JV and you have a long-standing relationship, but I'm so glad to be putting a face, a real person to the LinkedIn post, been just lurking through for the past few years. So
that's great. Great to see you. Nice to get past LinkedIn with you, Robin, and Jamie. Yes, we've known each other for some time. So nice to be with you again.
Of course.